today we're going to keep the theme of covering murders in my native hometown of Scotland. So far, since I've came back to YouTube, we've looked at cases in most recently Glasgow and everyone's favourite place in the world, Coatbridge. Today we head along to West Dunbartonshire. West Dunbartonshire houses one of the most beautiful places in the world, Loch Lomond. If you've not been, I'd recommend it. The views and walks are up there with the best in the world. I mean, look at this shit. As well as hosting the beautiful Loch Lomond, you can find the Vale of Leven. I know, how majestic does that sound? Like some Lord of the Rings type shit, the Vale. The Vale, as it's known, is used to describe the urban area towards the north of the valley that consists of Alexandria, which is the largest, Renton, Balloch, and last of all, Bon Hill. So it's like a cute little area with a couple of cute towns and villages that has a population of approximately 22,000 people. Amongst this beautiful Scottish scenery, and in between these 22,000 or so people, runs the beautiful River Leven. On the 25th of August 1996, a driver was passing by the River Leven and they noticed something unusual lurking in the water. What they would see would shock them to the core and haunt them with a sight that they would never forget for the rest of their life. Initially, they thought what they'd seen was just a dummy floating in the water, which in itself is weird enough. However, the reality would be far, far worse. In the river lay a young girl who was battered, bruised, bloody and lifeless. Around her lifeless body lay an array of bricks and stones, giving an indication of what could have potentially happened to her. The body in the river, after being investigated, would be found to be that of 14-year-old Caroline Glachan. Her body was found on her mother's 40th birthday. Caroline Glachan was born on the 8th of January 1982 in Derry, Ireland. She was an only child and a fourth-year pupil at Our Lady in St Patrick's High School in Dumbarton. It was at this high school in Dumbarton that she would cross paths with Robert O'Brien. Robert O'Brien, well, he was a couple of years older than Caroline. He was 18, she was 14, so make of that what you will. And he was a bit of a ladies' man, apparently. You definitely would not think it after looking at that ugly mug. I have no idea what any girl would see in him. O'Brien and Caroline were an item, officially, but as I say, he was a bit of a ladies' man, a player you could say. He boasted of having several girls on the go at one time. Despite this, which would put a lot of girls off, Caroline was, quote, infatuated with O'Brien. Fuck knows how. I mean, I guess it's not all about looks, is it? Their relationship was, how do I say it? It was pretty messy. Caroline would say how he'd lifted his hand to her, almost going to strike her. She would describe him as a bully. He even threatened to kill her after she was seen kissing another boy. See what I mean? Pretty messy. One's kissing another boy and one has several girls on the go at the time. You can see how things get complicated here. And to top it all off, he was a heroin addict. Just to put the cherry on top. What a clusterfuck. As I say, somehow he was a ladies' man, and another one of his side pieces was getting jealous. Donna Marie Brand, she was getting jealous. She threatened Caroline. She said that she was going to, quote, batter her. And no, they were not going to coat her with egg, flour and then breadcrumbs and throw her in the fryer until she came out nice and crispy. They meant they were going to beat the living shit out of her. She was going to beat the brakes off her. So, a pretty serious threat, if you ask me. But I guess this is what happens when you're a player like this dude. People are bound to get jealous. It's inevitable. Things would come to a boiling point on the night of the 24th of August 1996. Caroline, she was going to meet her boyfriend at a bridge that night, a move which her best friend strongly advised her against. She knew he was a piece of shit and told her it was not a good idea, no bueno, but she did not listen. She wanted to see her older boyfriend that she was infatuated with. She spent that day with her friends, shopping in the Ladyton estate at Renton before leaving late that night. She walked towards the Dillychip Bridge, where she was due to meet her boyfriend using the river towpath as a shortcut. She was due to meet her boyfriend. She would end up meeting more than just her boyfriend as she had planned. her boyfriend, her love rival, and one of their friends, Andrew Kelly, were all there. They started swearing and shouting at Caroline before things got violent. She was punched, kicked, and beat before she was brutally tossed or pushed into the River Leven. She then had bricks or brick-like objects thrown at her repeatedly as she lay there beaten in the river. She sustained at least 10 wounds to the head and eventually died of drowning in the river. The gang of killers then returned home like nothing happened. And it would remain that way. Nothing would happen to them. Not a thing. Right up until 2019 when the case was reopened. 23 whole fucking years after the initial murder. You gotta ask yourself, what the fuck were the police doing for 23 years to have nothing happening, no investigation ongoing, then suddenly one day they just say, right, fuck it, let's investigate this shit again. But either way, they decided to open it again 23 years later. The detective who was on the case, Stuart Granger, he took statements from over 200 people. Now, what we have to bear in mind here, that this is 23 whole years after the murder. Me personally, I can barely remember what I had for tea last week, never mind last month. If we're talking 23 whole years ago, my memory is going to be a bit all over the place, but fuck it. However, by doing this, he was actually able to disprove the alibis that were given by Robert O'Brien, Andrew Kelly, and Robert's side piece, Donna Marie Brand. He was able to prove that they were talking absolute smack. They were talking dribble. Straight fucking bullshit lies. They were able to see that shit just didn't seem to add up. Somewhere, something was missing. There had also been some very important new witnesses who had come forward that would help get justice for Caroline. Andrew Kelly, one of the suspects, he had been babysitting 2 young children. Archie Wilson, who was 4.5, as well as his younger brother. O'Brien and his side piece, Donna Brand, they would pull up to the property where they were babysitting that night. So the gang of 3 left, and they actually took the 2 kids to the river with them to meet Caroline at 11 PM. Archie, one of the young kids that was 4.5-year-old, who was being babysitting, he would end up telling his mother how he'd been taken down to the River Leven late that night before witnessing a, quote, lassie being battered and fallen into the water. He said they were down the Leven, that they were fighting with the lassie, that she ended up falling in and they had battered the lassie. His mother would reveal, he said. Archie and his mother were interviewed back in 1996, but she did not want her young boy involved at the time. Only in 2019 would she reveal the full extent of what her son had told her. Miss Wilson's neighbour was also a key witness. She told police how she saw 2 young men and women leave Miss Wilson's house before later returning. The trio had originally said that they were in the house all night babysitting, which shatters her alibi now that someone was able to come out and see she'd seen them leaving the house. O'Brien even tried to throw off the police by saying that Caroline had a stalker that followed her home on multiple occasions. This apparent stalker had a moustache. After Caroline's murder, O'Brien racked up multiple convictions. In 1997, he was sentenced to 18 months in jail for serious assault and robbery. In 2003, he was jailed for 3 months for drug dealing and possession of a knife. He even attempted to murder someone with a crossbow in 2006, a fucking crossbow. So this clearly paints a pretty good picture that this dude is a good for nothing piece of shit. This, alongside the new statements, witnesses and alibis being disproven, was ultimately enough to charge the trio. Robert O'Brien was sentenced to a minimum of 22 years behind bars. Kelly, the right-hand man, who was the chief babysitter, was handed a sentence of 18 years. The third accomplice, the love rival, Donna Marie Brand, was too ill to be sentenced and is still awaiting her sentence. Fuck me, she does not look healthy here. Looking at this, to me, it's shockingly similar to the previous case I looked at in the murder of Emma Caldwell. I mean, the murder happened around 20 years ago and it took that long for the police to reopen the case. So you've got to ask yourself, if O'Brien and the rest of them were suspects in the first place and she had arranged to meet her boyfriend, I'm pretty sure that paints a pretty strong picture. He was the last one who's seen her alive. She had complained about him to her mother. He was a known piece of shit. Like, surely the police should have pressed it harder, but I guess we'll never know.